Welcome to the Sec Newgate In Conversation with podcast series, where we talk to business leaders making a difference to their companies, colleagues, and communities. And today we have a very special conversation about the power of mentorship. 10 years ago, one meeting between two women sparked a relationship that would go on to shape a career, a leadership style, and even inspire new mentoring journeys. Those women are with me today. Emma Kane, Sec Newgate's head of EMEA and its UK CEO, a trailblazer in strategic communications, and Vicky McKay, a brand and partnerships leader. In celebration of National Mentoring Day, we're going to explore how mentorship has evolved over the past decade, the lessons learned along the way, and why in our fast-changing world, it matters more than ever. Welcome, Emma and Vicky.
Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me.
So, Emma, let's start with you. Why do you believe mentorship is still so important, especially in today's fast-paced, digital-first world where we're all just focused on ChatGPT writing our LinkedIn posts and, Instagram reels that are pre-made for us?
Well, I think that it's about relationships. It's about that bridge between experience and ambition. It's a way to share and explore one's experience and help someone ask the questions they need to ask about their career in a context where it's not a sort of boss doing it. So it's a totally different relationship, I think. And it's about unlocking those questions that people maybe don't feel able to explore with colleagues about what they really need to do, both in their own organisations and beyond, to achieve their ambitions.
That's really interesting because it's almost, as you speak, like it's more impactful if you're doing it out of your sector. Would you say that's the case?
Well, I think there's always a huge benefit for people to get perspectives from people from outside their sector. I think one of the most valuable experiences I ever had was at the Windsor Leadership Forum, where they've took people from military, religion, industry, charities, and so on, and they put us in a room together in groups of about 6 people, and we each had to share a business or personal challenge. And then we had half an hour doing that, and other people in that group asked us questions, and then we had to sit back and listen to them and sharing their views for some time on how they would tackle it. And people have a very different view of things when they're not sort of deep in the weeds of it, and that's very helpful. And I think with people's careers, if you're able to talk to them about your own experiences and just different ways of exploring some of those hurdles, I think it's sort of just a fresh approach. But I think more than anything, it's just about being able to be totally open, honest, non-judgmental on the other side, and just unpack things in a very sort of healthy and helpful way, as opposed nobody's got an agenda in that environment.
And having that objectivity and perspective, I think, is absolutely key, as you say. Vicky, from your perspective, talk a little bit about how mentorship has shaped your journey compared maybe with 10 years ago when you were starting out.
Yes, of course. I think it's been one of the sort of main constants in my career journey. I've always looked to have mentors, especially outside of where I've worked. And I think that it's mainly in the past been somewhere with people that are more senior than me. So they've kind of walked the walk, talked the talk, as it were. And I've wanted to be able to gain their knowledge and their experience and their advice and look at how I can do things better or how I can tackle something new with new eyes and new perspectives, avoid making mistakes and really look to kind of gain my confidence and stretch myself. But I think in recent years, especially in the last couple of years, I would say that it's been much more of a two-way exchange and much more conversational rather than me sort of turning up, asking the questions of the things I want to tick off my list. It's much more natural, much more authentic. It's a safe space. I think it's always been a safe space, but I feel much more relaxed personally in the approach to the conversations I have with mentor, and less pressure I think I put on myself now. And I think it's about helping them understand the challenges that you face so they can help you find new perspectives, point out maybe some blind spots that you might have where they can sort of open your eyes up, reframe things for you and tackle things, openly and slightly differently. And I think also that it's become much more of my everyday network. So it's important to me to have people in who do have the experience and the knowledge, but peer-to-peer conversation is just as powerful, I think, sometimes. And I've definitely found a use and a place for that in my world.
So take us back, Vicky, if you will. Let's rewind. I want to have one of those rewind buttons. I can imagine on the screen as we're going backwards. Excuse my terrible sound effects there, listeners. But take us back to that very first meeting with Emma. What was it about that moment that stayed with you and then also led to this mentoring relationship?
Yes, so I first met Emma when I was an audience member in a women's networking event, and Emma was on stage talking to the points of the event, but mainly was in that storytelling environment. She was able to give the background to her career and how she had got to where she was at that point in time. She talked about her endeavours and her passions within the arts and music, as well as her work around charity. And I was just blown away. And I just saw this woman who I thought I would really like to be like that and have some form of career like that. That I just thought she was spectacular. And so after the event, I approached Emma and I said, probably hello, but then went in there quite quickly before anyone else did because I was.
So you approached her IRL in real life in that moment in the room, or did you go on LinkedIn and follow up?
So I think I approached her in the room in the networking part after the speech and introduced myself. And then I emailed her afterwards. I don't think I was quite brave enough at that point to do it in person, but I wanted to introduce myself so she knew my name and what I looked like. So, with the intent of knowing that I was going to email her within 24 hours to say, I loved you. Would you please mentor me? And I was at the very beginning of my kind of marketing career and really felt like she was somebody that could really help me and shape my path and give me guidance and knowledge and expertise around how to kind of get that rolling and get that moving and the things I should be thinking about. And one of the things I was really happy about was Emma just welcomed me with open arms. There was no, let me check my diary or, well, obviously she needed to, but, it was absolutely, I would love to, and didn't feel like she was gatekeeping any of her knowledge or expertise. It was, I would love to share with you and help you on your early footing of your career. And so when we did spend time together, we had quite an informal setting where we would sit down, and the first, I think, session was around what are you looking to get out of it? How do you think I can help you? So we talked a bit about that. And then after that, I would come with a particular piece that I wanted to tackle and get her view on. But it was always done in a very open, authentic way and I was able to really learn and grow through the sort of guidance and expertise that she shared with me at the time.
So I can add to this too, because I'm now remembering, as you're saying, a very informal setting. Emma has actually mentored me as well.
Oh,
Yeah. So I was lucky enough to be partnered with her when I first started at Set Newgate. And one of the things that I absolutely loved was that our sessions were always walking. As I would term it with my Bloomberg hat on, we used to call it West Winging. And when Emma introduced this idea of doing a kind of West Wing mentoring moment, I thought, what better way to do it? And she showed me all of these different parts of the city. So it's almost like a history tour, also of like the places where she started her first business. And, this is where my son lives. And this is this back route through the Barbican. So at the same time as kind of learning and sharing in a really informal setting, I was learning a lot about the City of London as well. So thank you for that, Emma. Emma, let's go back to that first meeting with Vicky as well. I mean, that in itself is quite brave, right? Seeing somebody on stage and then going, right, I'm going to say hello to them. I think they're spectacular. I'm going to say hello to them. Do you remember that first moment? Because you were probably in the hubbub of the networking, the coffee break or whatever afterwards. And if you do remember it, what was it that stood out to you as someone sort of investing your time in?
There's two sort of sides to it. One is that it's obviously lovely. It doesn't matter, where you are in your career. It's lovely when someone comes up to you afterwards and says, I found that really valuable. That was really interesting. Because otherwise, if you don't get any feedback from those sessions, you're not quite sure whether you've hit the mark and so on. So that was great. And then there's this wonderful thing when you meet people who've got a passion. It doesn't matter what it is in life. If people have a passion for something, they're considerably more interesting. And if they're asking you to kind of help them in some way, and they've spotted in you that there's something that they think you could give, and you see in them that sort of ambition that you think you can help nurture. I mean, it's non-negotiable as far as I'm concerned. If someone wants to pick your brains, and it's a very different relationship to coaching, which is much more tailored and about setting goals and so on. This is this is it's an environment I feel much more comfortable in, because the most important skill for a mentor to have is to listen. Because really it's giving someone that space to talk things through and open up and so on. So I think, that's the number one thing. So that first meeting, I thought, Vicky is somebody who's clearly wants to do everything she can to be the best she can. And I thought, well, if I can play a small part in that, that'd be lovely. And then I think as we met, it was, I mean, it's valuable both ways as well, because the different stages you are in your career, whether it's talking to somebody who's starting out in their career in your own organization or from outside as a business leader, you hear things that are really important to, how you're going to help people in your own organization, how you can, maybe have been sort of slightly blind to some of the emerging trends and so on. And so it helped shape my thinking as well in a number of areas.
Over the years, I think that you've alluded to that there, Emma. Careers aren't straight lines, and we do get influenced by different things as we go along. There are many, many pivots. So, Vicky, I'm keen to understand from you, what have been some of those turning points in your career, and have you lent on mentorship at that time to help you through?
Yes, definitely. I think that I've had a few of those situations that you could call them sliding door moments at certain points, couldn't you? But I think early on in my career, I think I've had, a mentor who has really sort of pushed me and encouraged me to take on a project or a role that maybe I didn't have the confidence or didn't think I was quite ready for. And through those conversations and them sharing their experience, I was able to tackle that and then think about, okay, well, you don't have to know everything and tick all the 10 boxes, as it were, to be able to step in, to be able to do something. It is okay to learn sometimes as you go.
I remember those discussions.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you know what? I can still, the first strategy paper I ever wrote was because Emma helped me get there in terms of that thinking. And I visually can see it in my mind now. And I remember having a conversation with my boss, having put that paper together after having a session with Emma and presenting it to my boss at the time, and her being sort of a little bit blown away because she was like, oh, no one else in the team is doing this. But I wanted to demonstrate that I was thinking bigger than just my role. I was thinking about the team and the department. So there's that occasion. And I think that more recently, it's also when you face tough decisions in your career, maybe the role isn't quite right for you, or maybe there's something challenging happening where you need to be able to sort of pull on some knowledge and expertise in how to navigate a situation. And I think the experience I've had there is, back to what you were saying, Emma, is someone asking the right questions. It's not telling you necessarily what to do. There is a time and place maybe where you could share, this is what I would do in that circumstance. But I think it's about asking the right questions. So therefore you can unlock your thinking and also get there on your own as well.
I think to that point, I think that's a godsend for a boss. Someone thinking beyond what you're asking them to do day to day is really remarkable. Emma, before you were talking about the difference between coaching and mentoring. Talk to me about the difference between being really honest and being really encouraging, because I imagine there are moments as a mentor where you potentially think, oh, don't do that. But actually, is it your job to do that intake of breath?
When you're a mentor to someone, the feedback you're giving to them is a gift. When you're their boss, it's more of a judgment. So you can have very open conversations with someone, not worrying about the sort of people and culture HR framework you have to operate in. More that you can say, look, you really need to change your approach in this way, or the way that you present yourself in these situations.
And here is the framework which we're going to give you to support you to do that, right?
Yeah, exactly. But you're not sort of finding yourself then having, as an employer, having those comments sort of weaponized against you. So it's a safer space for both parties to provide that sort of feedback. Is a partnership rather than some kind of power dynamic that is more challenging. And it's about helping your mentee with their growth and achieve their potential, rather than compliance in a situation that needs to be much more carefully navigated.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think it has, talking as the mentee, I think it has takes the pressure away from those situations when you're talking with a mentor versus your boss in your one-to-one or getting feedback on a project or wherever it might be. And I think you're also, in some instances, not every instance, but I think your ears are much more open and listening and ready to receive that feedback and that conversation sometimes than maybe.
Come with an agenda.
Absolutely.
It's you're outside that reporting line. You can be more candid. You're focused on the person, not their role, or the fact that maybe you're not in a position to promote them. There isn't a role for them to go into above that. All you're trying, there's no sort of fear of performance or pay reviews and things. It is just purely about how you help them start acting beyond that role and show and help them shine.
So therefore, do you think mentoring can work within an organisation?
It definitely can. I just think that if you're lucky enough to find people outside who, don't where there's no kind of vested interest in it. It's purely, we met because you came up and said, I could really do with you giving me some sort of insights in my own career. I mean, I think sometimes if an organisation gives you a mentor from outside, they're going to. I think that sometimes they can be worried that you are. If they're really good, it might help you leave that organisation. I think there's all sorts of reasons why it can be a complex thing. But I think if you found your own and you've identified what you want from that person in a mentor, then it can work internally. But the trust that needs to exist as well. If you're choosing somebody from a different department in your own organisation, the framework has to be there to say either this cannot be sort of used against me, passed on, or it can be, and we're doing it in the knowledge that it will be. I don't know. I think, do you know what I mean? It's a very different.
Where does Chatham House rule apply?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that sort of safety to be able to really ask questions that make you very vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think that's where the value comes, as opposed to that sort of formal coaching environment, which is quite a different thing.
Sometimes I've in the past I've had an internal mentor where I've worked and then also had an external, but that is very deliberate to have two very different outcomes from those types of conversation. So the internal one is, for example, it was at a time when I really wanted to deepen my knowledge and understanding and perspective of the business and wanted that help and guidance from that person that could give me that wider thinking in that context. And that wasn't necessarily from a leader. I wasn't looking for leadership. There was an element of leadership in there, but less so than when I was working with my external mentor, which was around women in leadership, marketing specific, a much safer, unpressured environment. So I agree with you. I think it can have its place, but I think you need to be very clear on what you're going to get out of it and what it's there to do.
Certainly in our own organisation here at Sec Newgate, we do have that programme. But there's a whole sort of guide to how it works, and everybody knows exactly the rules of engagement.
I'm interested to explore. You both spoke about meeting in person at first. We were looking at Emma's diary before we started recording, and there's barely any room to breathe in Emma's diary. And I do wonder, in this sort of hectic hybrid world, what are both of your opinions? And I'll open it to you both, whoever would like to reply first. That role of in-person versus virtual, how important is one versus the other?
Well, if I may kick off here, I mean, two things is, one is when you look at my diary, what you might not have seen is that I do actually block out time to think in my diary. Tomorrow there isn't any, but I think that's just my sort of gift to anyone listening is treat yourself as your most important client and meeting and give yourself, block the time in, otherwise it will never happen. But I think that it's really important to meet in person. There are, you can have a quick, can I grab you for a few minutes over a Teams just to sort of run something by you? But this is very personal. I mean, you wouldn't run many sort of personal relationships sort of purely virtually. Yeah, I'm a bit old-fashioned there. Maybe you would. But
I'm with you.
No, I mean it is. You need to sort of really sort of sit in a room together and roll out a map of the world and
and there's
understand.
something about body language.
Absolutely.
And receiving.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I was going to say chemistry as well, because, I think there could be a situation where you have asked someone and actually maybe, and I think it's very important through looking in someone's eyes, understanding their body language. Obviously, you get tone through virtual, as I understand that. But I think sometimes maybe the chemistry isn't there and it's not as helpful as you think it, and that's okay.
Yeah.
But I think you won't know that as much or be able to tell that as quickly as if you're not face-to-face and in person.
Which is why it's a great idea when you do spot people at events and things and you think, I really would love to get some help from this person, that you go up there and then as Vicky said, because something coming over, just sort of a random thing coming over LinkedIn saying, I saw your profile, I'd really love it if you'd been my mentor. It's very easy to say no to those things, and
Yeah.
you haven't got a connection with them. So be bold, do that, and then continue to build that relationship. Because also when you're actually in a room with someone and that chit chat before and after on the way down, that's when then you go, you don't happen to know this person, do you, or something? And it's always the last 5 minutes of any meeting are always when the most
Yeah.
important things are said. By the way, just before I go, and you always know that's coming at the end.
And another thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking about connection, I wonder how important it is to talk about things outside of work. So I'm a big believer in talking about the hinterland, the other stuff, because I'm passionate about arts and culture. I love to read. I love to go to the theatre. I love music. And so that is something that I often bring into conversations. Is that a good way with a sort of mentor to establish rapport, chemistry, relationship?
Well, I was going to come into this when you started that from a slightly different angle, in that one of the things that I always say to people is that it's a really great idea as part of your sort of career and development generally to try and get yourself a role on the board of another organisation. And I think every business leader should have one of those roles outside their own organisation.
And I can add to that
Yeah.
that I do, and that's sort of where I was thinking.
Yeah.
Was I was thinking I'm on the board of a theatre.
Yeah.
And that marries with my passion.
Correct. And those conversations that happen around those tables, often going back to an earlier point we made, bring people from different industries
Yep.
with different roles. So they might be a specialist in people and culture, they might be an operations expert, they might be, there's so many, a finance person. And so the angle that they come to specific questions that are put to the board from open your eyes to all sorts of new ways of thinking. And I think that's very valuable. So it's not easy just to walk into board role, but I know Vicky and I have talked about volunteering in certain areas and how you can get into organisations and then get those opportunities. So I think that's really important, and I think also enables you to have much more interesting conversations with people when you're going for job interviews, when you're engaging with customers, clients, whatever it may be, because you just have it sort of that sort of hinterland that is.
And I imagine that's worked well in terms of the work that you've done with the Elton John Foundation also.
Yeah. Elton John AIDS Foundation, Target Ovarian Cancer, the Arts and Humanities Research Council, the Barbican, all these organisations that I either currently or have had the honour of serving on have, brought me a wealth of insights that I would never have had. I know that I've given my experience and expertise to them, but I've got back in multiples, the same sort of benefits in reverse.
And Vicky, did that speak to you when Emma advised you that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think not just knowing what Emma was involved in was inspirational to me, and then inspired me to think about how do I give back? How do I want to, as well as having, as you've mentioned, about interests and things that go on, and being able to have discussions, meaningful discussions with people around that are not just family members or close friends. So I sort of shortly started to volunteer for the Young Women's Trust, became an ambassador. I started doing some fundraising for them. It also gave me the opportunity to work on some things that I had never done before. Despite being in marketing, I'm not a copywriter. I don't put being a content writer up as in my top 3 is my skill set. But they were asking me to write articles for them and do various different bits of volunteering for them. It wasn't just raise funds and being an ambassador for them. And so it opened my world up to, as a marketeer, to be able to do things at that point in time that I hadn't done before. And therefore, when I was talking to people about this new passion and this new piece of, this new thing that I was doing in my life, which was working with them, it just made a really good conversation and things that I could talk about. And then ask them, have they ever thought about things in terms of volunteering? And like you said, I think it creates a spark and an energy. And then even if that's not something that you can relate to, it can lead to something else and building that rapport with the relationship with the person that you're speaking to.
And life is all about relationships. So it's, that's absolutely key.
And does that then feed into you potentially mentoring other people? You mentioned the volunteering, and you would start speaking to others about the Young Women's Trust.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that probably more in a working environment rather than anything from a volunteering basis with a charity in terms of my experience with mentoring. But again, always been sort of fairly informal. I've never wanted to, I've always taken the same stance that Emma had approached with me, as I mentioned at the beginning, about not gatekeeping anything, not holding anything back, not wanting to see others not succeed. It's all about lifting each other up and, hands connecting so the next person can, paving the way, whatever that might be. So I think that's been really important. And I've been very lucky to have really lovely people that have been truly experts in what they do, share that knowledge and expertise with me. And I've wanted to be able to pay that forward with what I've done with the people that I've connected to informally. And whether that's they've mentioned in passing that they would quite like to get involved with the type of marketing or the type of work that I do. I'm like, well, come into this meeting, come and sit down and listen to these people speak, see if it is for you. And it doesn't always have to be a sit down formal agenda. It could be something that's quite informal, coffee chats, join this meeting, I just thought of you, whatever it might be.
Emma, you talked a little bit before about giving back, and you alluded to legacy, and I wonder whether that's why you continue to mentor, given how many different roles you are doing and the busyness of your life. What is it that you are getting from it that means that you want to continue giving back?
Well, there's nothing lovelier than someone saying, as Vicky did, you really helped me make some sort of key decisions and help me shape my career. And I mean, that's the biggest compliment I think anyone can ever pay you. And you don't do it for the compliments, but you do it hoping that you're going to help someone and make a difference. And I mean, that's what legacy is all about, isn't it? The impact that we can have in whatever way, in however sort of bigger way on other people's lives. And so having some success hopes that you can have, you can do it for some other people as well. So I don't do huge amounts of it, but I'm delighted to help where I can. And I think I mean, one of the things I remember actually from that first session, and I don't think it was Vicky, but it was somebody said to me that they'd had lots of people giving talks about, how incredible they are and, almost sort of superhuman. And that's not really helpful. It's like when you get women saying, oh, I've never experienced any sexism, or I've never this, that, and the other. It doesn't help people who are having difficult times and navigating those things. So if you can talk about, how you've managed to bring up some children and the fact that you never actually made it to any of their sports days, or you did because you had a great support network or whatever it might be, you're much more human, and then you help people realize that the things that they're going through aren't necessarily going to be an anchor on their careers forever, or there are ways of navigating. You can help people find a way, or you can help them feel less guilty about. You say, well, like in my case, I didn't actually make it to the school gate hardly ever, but my children are fairly well rounded and all sort of doing okay and so on. And I think it just helps people. It's not saying it's the right way. It's just saying
This was my experience.
My experience. Don't beat yourself up about it. You can only when I always say that when I put my head on the pillow at night, I've done the best I can. That's good enough for me. So just sharing some of those thoughts. So that, to me, legacy is really about, knowing that you've done your little bit to help that person take another step forward.
And Vicky, for those listening, is there any advice that you would give, a kind of call to action to say, okay, if you want a mentor, or you are a mentee in search of a mentor, what would be your advice?
I think there'd be a couple of things. I would probably first of all just say, just get started. Some people maybe feel a bit nervous to approach people, or maybe they actually feel like they've got something that they can give back, so they're nervous to sort of reach out. And I think you don't have to start big and formal and fancy. It can just be something that's as lovely as a coffee at the coffee shop around the corner, for example. People will really value the input and the impact that they will be able to receive once you share your knowledge and expertise. I know that I am. I'm so grateful when people give up their time for me. And equally, I feel that on the reverse when I've given that up for them, because that's how I want them to feel. The second thing is to be open. And we've talked about being authentic and genuine. I think it's not about putting on a facade to go, look how great I am, I'm bossing it. I too have done the running up the escalators at Waterloo to try and make the train to get to the nativity play because I feel like I'm failing. But, I think it's about absolutely being genuine and authentic. And I think it's about listening, absolutely being a good listener. It's not about giving all the answers, because you're not always going to have them. And I think it's about a mutual growth. We talked about it's definitely a two-way relationship. So they would be my key things.
Thank you so much. Anything that you want to add, Emma?
I mean, I think just in terms of that listening is the number one thing, guiding people rather than dictating. I think one of the things that maybe might put people off being a mentor is they think they need to have all the answers. They don't. They just need to have sort of powerful questions that they want to ask that are going to unlock things inside people, to explore, what might be holding them back or who they might know and so on. And I think at the outset, clarifying what each other's expectations are, because I think, again, people might just think, well, I haven't got enough time, or I really don't know your sector or something. It's just understanding how you can help people. I think, honesty, if you've got some feedback that's going to really help somebody do better, then sharing that is, as I said before, is a gift. It's not a sort of, it's a judgment. That's why they've come to you, because they want to. And that's the thing, is that if you're in a kind of personal development meeting in a business, you are getting sort of judged and told things, but you're not necessarily there actively wanting to receive that feedback. The person you've got there as your mentee has come to you because they want you to help them be better. So that's a real privilege, I think, to be able to share that. And then I think the other thing is being generous, not just in terms of your thoughts, but expanding their networks by introducing people. That's again a great. I mean, I always think people who are generous with their business connections. That's one of the most sort of valuable forms of generosity as we're building our careers. Saying, oh, it might just be helpful for me to introduce you to so and so, a contact that they would never get, but that person will take the meeting with you because they owe you something.
Well, what brilliant advice. Listen hard, be honest, be generous with your connections, and it doesn't have to be big, formal and fancy. Thank you so much to Emma and to Vicky for joining me today.
Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you so much for having us.
So as we've heard today, mentorship isn't a single moment. It's a relationship that grows, adapts, and gives back in both directions. It's never too early or too late to find a mentor, and never too soon to become one yourself. And as Emma and Vicky's story shows us, the best mentorships are those where both people grow, give, and gain. Thanks to Emma and Vicky for taking the time to share their story with us. And thank you to you for listening. Join us next time on the Sec Newgate In Conversation With podcast. You can find out more at www.secnewgate.co.uk or connect with us, Emma Kane, Vicky McKay and Naomi Kerbel on LinkedIn. Thank you for listening.